What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Arris Quinones, with Tim Connolly.
What's up, everybody?
Today, we have something, Tim, that everyone knows by now. Everyone listening knows I am like the biggest Batman fan ever. So I have been waiting for this ever since it was teased 5 years ago. Batman the Three Jokers. It's finally over. It's done. It's done. We know the ending. We know everything, and we're about to break it down.
It is concluded,
yes,
as they say.
Yes.
And we need to quantify that. I wonder if there's like some sort of a Guinness Book of Records for the biggest Batman fan in the world. I would love to enter you in that competition, considering your bat room. We'll call it the Arris Batcave.
You know what? I would gladly enter. Gladly.
Well, if there is one, I nominate you. How about that?
I'm glad that you'd vote for me.
Oh, I'm a total fan. Yeah, total fan.
But anyway, it's, it came to an end, and we're here to spoil the crap out of it. The last issue, that is.
That's right. So be forewarned. If you're here, Three Jokers is about to get spoiled for everyone.
Yes. So I feel like before we really dive in, we should tell everyone what our initial thoughts of it as a whole was. Like before we start picking it apart, especially, I'm going to tear apart that last issue because there's several things to get into. But before we start going all that way, it's like, you go first. What was your overall, as all three issues, the story as a whole?
We have already established that you're the Batman.
Fine. I was
the Batman guy. Right. I mean, although I guess it makes sense that I don't have to follow up what you said.
Yeah, I was trying to just, because I probably will rant longer. So I'm like, you kick it off because I'm probably going to be here for an hour.
Yeah, you're gonna be ranting for quite some time. So I can say, for starters, because we've already talked about it quite a bit. Like we did have, and this is going to show, and Arris's fandom is definitely going to show in his comments. And mine is me not being as big a Batman fan, although I am a Batman fan.
Right.
But I am not the gigantic. I don't have a bat room, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I don't have a bat room.
If you're a big Batman fan, that's your favorite hero, this story is going to mean a lot more to you than it is to a normal comic fan that's not, their favorite character is the Flash,
Mm-hmm. So first of all, let me just say Jeff Johns' writing was just brilliant throughout the entire 3-book run. It was so good. The story itself it was both fun and compelling and interesting. It was really well written. The art by Jason Fabok, my God,
dude,
was so good. Oh my gosh. Some of the best artwork we've gotten for Batman in quite some time, I think. Fabok's work is always good, and we've had just unbelievable artists on the Batman books over the last, I would say, decade or so. Mm-hmm. Greg Capullo and everything, but just Fabok just did a killer job. It was so good. Having said that, I did enjoy the book. I think it was one of the better Batman stories in recent years. Having said that, I did have some issues with it. And I did walk away from it. I read it again because after I read it the first time, it hit me weird and I had some question marks. But so I read it again, and it only really confirmed the things that I think bothered me a little bit about it. It wasn't bothered me enough to where I was like, wow, that wasn't as good, or that was a letdown per se. Mm-hmm. I just left me a little bit disappointed in the sense that I felt like it left me wanting, or wishing is the better word, wishing that certain things had been different.
Right.
And it left a little bit, on the table for me. But overall, I really did enjoy it. It was a great story, great compelling work by Jeff Johns and team. And again, great art by Jason Fabok. With that, I will turn it over to you. And then once you're done with your initial thoughts, then we'll dive into the things that bothered me and why.
All right. Yeah. So off the bat, pun intended. No, I really love this story. I thought it was very clever. Now, I do know that this is I feel like all really good stories, they're kind of polarizing to a certain degree. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm, it's always you're just going to, because it's just, Jeff Johns did so much with this story, right? And I think a problem that a lot of people are having is it didn't really turn out to be whatever everyone thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Again, we'll get into spoilers, but by the end, the whole Three Jokers thing is answered, but it's not really answered. At least not in the way that people thought it was going to be answered, or change, continuity to where oh, there's literally always been three Jokers and stuff like that. It was kind of, again, we'll get into that a bit, but I liked where he went with that just for reasons.
Right.
But no, I thought the thing with Jeff Johns that I love so much, and that he proved again with this story, is he's the guy who can go back to all these iconic characters, and he's done it several times, and add to their mythos in just such an impactful way. I mean, he's the dude who revealed that Reverse Flash killed Barry Allen's mother, meaning the Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, was responsible for Barry becoming the Flash. Like, he revealed that, you know, in the Flash Rebirth storyline. And he did something to that effect in this story too. A massive reveal. Like, this is like, I want to get to the spoilers already, so we just talk about it. But but like, you know, I was talking to you about this. We were talking to some friends about this. Like, I would argue that one of the reveals in this book is one of the biggest reveals in comic books, period, because it's for the Joker, and the Joker is easily, bar none, not one of the most famous comic book characters of all time, one of the famous fictional characters of all time. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have ever even looked at a comic book to know who the Joker is. And they do a massive reveal for him in this book. So there's so many things to the Batman mythos. There's like 4 or 5 that are huge. They do something with Joe Chill that's massive. They do something with the Joker's origin that's massive. Just lots of things. So I will say I love the story. Now let's spoil the crap out of it.
All right. Well, you kind of already were like you're like a cheetah stuck in a cage. So I'll let you turn loose on your full thoughts to go out on the bat.
All right. Let's start with like the 2 biggest things. First, let's start with Joe Chill. Okay, so Joe Chill was introduced into this series in issue 2. At the end of issue 2. The Joker basically kidnaps him from Arkham, and we learn that Joe Chill is dying. He's got like stage 4 or stage 5 cancer, and he's dying. So he's in hospice in Arkham Asylum, and Joker steals. Is it Arkham or was it Blackgate? I don't remember. I think it was Blackgate. It was Blackgate. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, in Blackgate, and he takes him out of there. And at the end of the issue 2, Joker's all like, you know, he recorded a camera and said, "Now, here's the big question, Mr. Chill. Why did you kill Thomas and Martha Wayne?" And that was a huge cliffhanger leading to the finale in issue 3.
Right, yeah.
And in this issue...
Really interesting cliffhanger, too, because just the whole Joe Chill aspect of that made you immediately go, whoa.
So in this issue... we see ultimately, again, you know, skipping something. If you guys want to know like the great detail, we did an episode where we break down this issue. Like, it's literally one of our longest episodes. It's 22 minutes breaking down like every bit of issue 3. But
it's up there with one of the longest episodes we've ever done.
No joke. Again, the Batman fanboy comes out. But anyway, we find out that the reason Joker stole Joe Chill is to get the confession, tell Batman the reason why. And the reason is that we find out Joe Chill is actually kind of reformed now, right? Like, he regrets killing Thomas and Martha Wayne. He's living with it now. He's in deep regret. He wrote several letters that Batman finds in his cell, unfinished letters that he wanted to send to Bruce to be like, "Hey, I'm sorry for what I did," you know, and he's living in deep regret because, you know, he didn't even want to do it. Like, you see in the book where he wanted to kill Martha and Thomas Wayne at first because he thought like he was poor and, you know, not doing good in life because of rich people like them, when in actuality, the Waynes were actually trying to help the city, right? And he didn't see Bruce was there, and he thinks he just got caught up in the moment and ended up killing them, but he regretted doing that, especially in front of their son. So he's sad because, 1, he killed this little boy's parents, and 2, in killing Thomas and Martha Wayne, he set Gotham like, you know, to hell essentially, because they were the only 2 people in Gotham that were going to change it and make a difference. So with them gone, with, you know, and their vision and money to change it, that's it. It was all like downhill from there. So that was a kind of cool like reveal as well, where that's kind of been hinted on in the past, but I feel like, or it kind of, you could kind of assume it, but Jeff Johns flat out said it with Chill's confession that, oh, like, Chill's also responsible, not just for the creation of Batman, but literally for Gotham being the way it is. Because if the Waynes, you know, lived, Gotham probably would have been restored and, you know, back on the up and up. So
if you were a normal person and you made a terrible mistake, can you imagine that being on your shoulders?
The whole entire city with all these lunatics running around.
Not only did you kill a couple of good people and leave their sons alone, but you also ruined an entire city.
But in the end, Batman actually gets closure with Joe Chill. Like, so much so, he ends up saving him in Crime Alley from bricks falling on him because there was a big explosion due to the Joker and Batman fighting. Batman ends up saving Joe Chill in the very alley that he murdered his parents. So that whole full circle thing, again, just like that alone, being a Batman fan and stuff is like, oh my God, like this came full circle. And, you know, seeing that he's reformed, and even a reverend that was helping rehabilitate Joe Chill, who had a conversation with Batman earlier. He's like, okay, yeah, this guy's like, you know, he regrets it. You know, it was helping heal Bruce so much to the point by the end, Bruce literally is holding Chill's hand in a hospital while he dies, and he ends up getting closure with Joe Chill. Like, that was like, so that right there would be the climax of any Batman story. But that is literally only one piece to this story. That alone, again, if that just happened in any storyline, we would make an episode on it. We would talk about that solely here on the podcast, but that's just one thing. The crazy part to me, that the way Jeff Johns attached what Joker did to that. So again, that's a massive thing. First of all, Joe Chill's dead, right? But not only that, Bruce was able to get closure with Joe Chill before he died. So that's a massive thing. Super huge. Because we even see an issue too, like when Batman goes to Joe Chill's cell for the first time, he's like choked up and kind of like, you know, kind of a little like rocky about it. And you don't see Batman, you know, like kind of get thrown off too much, but it's like, hey, this is the guy who literally made me who I am. So he's even like more nervous to kind of go to this guy than he is the Joker. But in any case, we find out that the whole reason one of the Jokers did this, the last remaining Joker, which we'll get into that in a second. The last remaining Joker did this.
And I think this part of it is what made his resolution with Joe Chill so compelling.
Yes.
And what made it so interesting is how and why it happens.
Yeah. The whole reason why we find out that this last Joker who's left, which is the Killing Joke Joker, by the way, the comedian, did this was to heal Batman, because Joker knew himself that the greatest pain in Batman's life will always be Joe Chill. No matter what Joker did to his family, to him or anyone, Joe Chill was literally the guy, right? He's the guy who created Batman. He killed Bruce's parents. And Joker can never do that. His parents are already dead. He can never top that. Joe Chill literally made him Batman. And Joker knew this. So he's like, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to give you closure with this guy so that in turn, now I could be the biggest wound and pain in your life. Now I'm number one. With him out of the equation and you forgiving him, now I'm your number one guy. You hate no one more than me, which I thought was the most Joker thing ever. Now, again, there's been variation. Like, that's what the Joker is like all about, right? So there's been variations of this done before where it's always comes down to like, you know, something about Joker and Batman's relationship. It always comes down to that. You know what I mean? But this one was like, which I'm fine with too, because that's kind of the complaints with some people I've heard that are like, yeah, it kind of reminded me of like something, what they did in The Killing Joke or what they did in the recent Joker War storyline. But I'm like, for me, it kind of gives continuity where it's like, well, yeah, because that just means they're all writing the same version of the Joker, because he's not going to like change his mindset. So I thought that was brilliant. So the whole reason to kidnap Joe Chill was to heal Batman. So it's like, hey, I'm helping you, but only to hurt you even more. He literally says to him, like, I am everything and nothing to you. And, you know, Joker says this to Batman. It's just like, oh my God. He goes, and now, essentially with him out of the way, I have the knife in your heart with my hand on the handle, and I'm going to twist it until the day we both die. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, again, being like a Joker Batman fan, I'm like, this is the freaking coolest thing. Because it's a massive reveal, and Joker, it's like, that's the most Joker thing ever, right? Where he's like this, he's like he doesn't have a plan, but he does have a plan. Like, that's his thing, where he doesn't have a plan, but he kind of does have a plan. And it was brilliant. Freaking brilliant.
Do I look like the guy who has a plan?
Yeah, but what this also reveals too, because there's so many things connected, which is like another piece, it officially 100% unequivocally confirms that Joker does know Bruce Wayne's identity. He literally says in the book for the first time, as far as I ever remember, and I've read a lot of Batman books, because Snyder's hinted upon it, James Tynion recently hinted upon it, but literally Joker said Bruce Wayne, Jason Todd, Barbara Gordon, I don't really care. Your secret's safe. I'm not going to tell anyone because if I tell people who you are, you might stop being Batman and then this game stops. So he knows who he is and who everyone is, which again, we knew, but he flat out says it in this book. And he doesn't care. He just, because he knows if he ever tells anyone his identity, that might make him stop being Batman. And that, you know, that would suck for him. That's the whole, like, Joker's whole reason for existing is to torment Batman.
Yeah.
So
that part of it, I thought it was really cool. That one didn't strike me as like, wow, because, you know, the Joker has hinted at it. You know, they have hinted that he knows several times in the past. Most recently, I guess it would be Snyder's iteration of it in, I believe it was Death in the Family.
Death of the Family.
Death of the Family. So where, you know, Bruce was even going to tell him, you know, and Joker like throws himself, you know, off of a cliff basically to avoid hearing it because he didn't want the confirmation because of the whole thing. But it was heavily alluded to that the Joker does know who Batman is.
Right.
So it was, you know, that one was like, that's cool. I loved the line, the way he wrote it, the way he presented it. And the fact that they did officially confirm it, you know, with this. I thought it was cool, but it didn't strike me as like, whoa, this is like massive. So I liked it, but it didn't, that kind of fell in line with some of the other stuff that I'll say too, but it was brilliantly written. It was really well worked into the overall story of what they were doing with Joker here. It just wasn't, it just didn't impact me as much as I think it did you.
Well, it's one of those cool things because I know even like in the episodes we do, like when we're covering the Joker War storyline, there's a lot of comments being like, so does he know? Does he know? So there's a lot of people that like, they do want it spelled out. You know what I mean? Like they don't want the ambiguity. They want it to be flat out said. Yeah. So in the sense that like now you can no longer argue it. Like it's now that is he knows.
I kind of liked the ambiguity of it though.
Oh, so do I. What's weird to me is like, as you'll see with other stuff in the story, I kind of go back and forth because like you mentioned in Death of the Family, I loved how Snyder did it to where like he kind of teased where like, oh, maybe the Joker doesn't know. And he literally fell off the cliff because he doesn't want to hear it. You know what I mean? So I kind of like, I feel like I go back and forth. I feel like I'm almost like that more just because it leaves that like, I don't know, well, maybe he doesn't, or maybe he does. Cause then there's even a scene where like Bruce goes to visit him in his cell and the Joker won't look back at him because he hears his voice because he's talking to him. So he knows it's Batman because he's talking to him, he hears his voice, but he doesn't want to look back to see who it is. But it was still kind of like, but maybe he does know even though he's not looking, like the way they read it. So I wrote it. So I don't know. I with Joker, I feel like it's weird. I love, because he's all about, you know, the mystery. So I think maybe I do like that he doesn't know, but I mean, that's not a thing anymore. But it's also it also again with him knowing leads for really cool confrontations like this where he could hit him super personal. So that's where I'm like, that's why I keep going back and forth, because it's like him knowing allows him and makes sense why he goes after like all these people in his family. Obviously, he's gonna go. He doesn't have to know who Batgirl's identity is or Robin's identity is to go after them, but it just makes it him able to push that knife in that much deeper if he knows exactly who he is. And it's kind of cool too, on you know, playing devil's advocate with myself here, that he knows who they are, but like he's not telling anyone because the game is what's most important to him. You know what I mean? Right. So if I feel like it works.
Keeping Batman where he wants him is more important.
Right. So it's kind of, I think you can play with it both ways mentally, because I think they both say a lot for the psychology of the Joker, whether he does know or doesn't know. Because if he does know, again, it's very interesting that he's only willing to push it so far because he doesn't want to push it to the point where he makes him not Batman anymore. But if he doesn't know, it's really cool because Joker's all about mystery and the unknown is always more scary. So, yeah. I don't know. It depends on my mood that day. I fall both ways.
I guess it falls into the camp of, you know, from just a fan standpoint, the ambiguity for me. I guess I'll speak for me. From a fan standpoint, I liked the ambiguity because it kept that air of mystery about the Joker a little bit. You know, that's one of the biggest parts about the Joker, right? Is that air of mystery that always surrounds him. But then, so it really aided, and it was part of that whole kind of character presentation. But the part about him knowing, I agree with you completely. that it does break open and crack open the door of some potential very cool story opportunities in the future. And some that will couple with some other things that happened in the story that we'll get to here in a second.
Yeah, for sure. So, crazy, crazy stuff. So you got the Joe Chill thing. You got the final, confirmation that no one could argue anymore that he obviously knows. And then you have other cool things. Before I want to leave the best one for last, but you have other things that I really loved where they touch on Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon's relationship, which I thought was really cool because the only 3 Bat characters in the book, it's Batman, Red Hood, and Batgirl. And through all the chaos and things they've been through, it makes sense because no one's been hit harder by the Joker and the Bat family than obviously Batman himself. But then you could even argue even more so in a sense, Batgirl, who was paralyzed and seemingly raped by the Joker, and then Jason Todd, who was literally killed and beaten by the Joker. So
yeah,
they share this, this kind of bond that, people like Damian, Tim Drake, and Dick Grayson can't even relate to because they never have gone through something that crazy with the Joker. And it ultimately leads to them having like a kiss in, I believe, issue 2. And then at the end of book 3, you see Jason write a letter to Barbara Gordon, taping it to her door, being like, hey, look, I want to give us a chance. I'll be whatever you want me to be. If you don't want me to be Jason Todd, I won't be Jason Todd. Essentially, I'll do whatever you want. I love you. Let's make this work. But the letter falls off the door and a janitor sweeps it away. And the crazy part is he says in the letter, which adds to the tragedy that is Jason Todd, is he says in the letter, he's like, look, if you don't bring this letter up ever or bring this conversation up, I won't bring it up. I'll just leave it at that, and I'll take your answer as no. So with the janitor sweeping that note away, it's like, oh, that sucks, because now he's just going to think that the answer is
she's
no.
Not interested, yeah.
Right, which for me, the bigger question is, why not just slip it under the door?
That's what I was thinking. It's like, why would you tape it to the door like that, man? Who does that?
Like, obviously for story purposes, that then Jeff Johns wouldn't be able to do what he wanted to do with that. But like in the all of us fans are like, but in the real world, you would just slip it under the door, though.
Exactly. Yeah, you're just gonna wait a second, hold on, because you're just gonna slide it under there like that. That's what you're gonna do.
You're just gonna tape it.
Yeah, you're just gonna tape it on the door like that. Yeah, no, nobody's gonna do that because you wouldn't even want strangers walking by and be like, oh, what's this?
Right, for sure. Him confessing his undying love for her.
Yeah. So you would obviously put it under the door so it's only for her eyes. That's just crazy.
Anyway, I think that I would love for this to be a relationship they would explore later on because of all the reasons I said earlier, where Jason and Barbara share this special bond in the sense where like they went through this very similar tragedy together by the same person. So I think that would be, obviously Dick and Barbara is always going to be like the best and like the one we all love. But like a Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon relationship would be very, very interesting. I would love to see that.
Yeah. That'd be interesting for sure. I would love to see Dick and Jason duke it out.
Yeah, so like a love because we've seen the love triangle with Bruce, Dick, and Barbara in the BTAS continuity.
That one was way more weird. Yeah, that was way weirder.
I remember we did that episode. People was like, "We don't bring that up. We don't bring that up.
We don't talk about."
I'm like,
that.
No, we talk about this because that happened. That's crazy, and it needs to be said.
That's true. That's true.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Bruce got a Batgirl pregnant. So. In the BTAS,
too much, man.
BTAS continuity. That's right.
It was a step too far.
But now let's get to, I think, like the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from this comic, because there's lots of little things that we could probably jump back and forth with. But the biggest thing for this comic is Jeff Johns in DC made the Killing Joke origin for the Joker canon in this series. This is out of everything is what blew my mind the most, because at the end when he locked up the last Joker, we see him back in the Batcave with Alfred, and he's like, he's just talking to Alfred, basically saying, hey, I know who the Joker is. And we're seeing like flashbacks of like the time from the Killing Joke. Like literally Jason Fabok drew it as if that panel belonged in the Killing Joke in black and white and everything. We see a flashback of the Joker's pregnant wife, right? And we learn that she basically was scared of him, right? Like they played it up to where like he was abusive and he would freak out on her. So she went into like protection by the police. They saved up money and they're like, hey, look, we'll put you this somewhere and this guy will never hurt you again. And we'll tell him that you died in an accidental electrical fire, which is what happened in the normal Killing Joke story, that we've known for all these years. His wife apparently, or yeah, I guess now apparently apparently died with a bottle warmer because she was pregnant, so she was testing a bottle warmer for their future baby, and it started a fire and she died. And that's what he was told, and we were led to believe all these years. This freaking takes all that away, and we find out no, that was a lie. The cops told him so she could be safe in hiding, meaning the Joker's wife is still alive. And not only that, her son, their son is alive. Well, that's a crazy thing too, because we know it's a son. He has a son now who's older. So he has a son and a wife that are hiding in Alaska. Bruce knows where they are. And not only that, he knows the Joker's name. He's freaking, he says to Alfred, he's like, not to sound like people think I sound, Alfred, but I'm Batman. I knew his name.
I loved that line,
I knew his name the first week we met. I'm like, oh, dude, that's crazy. That makes all the sense in the world. It's so good. Which kind of goes back to the Snyder thing too, right? Where at the end of Death of the Family, he's holding Joker over the cliff. He's like, yeah, I figured it out. I know your name is. And then Joker lets go before he could say it. So that kind of lines up actually too. So I thought that was really cool. But how crazy is that? Because the whole thing for the Joker, again, this is the thing that I said is like one of the biggest things in comics in general. Because again, the Joker, easily one of the most popular characters in all of fiction. And his whole thing and what makes him so cool to a certain extent is that we don't know who he is. He doesn't have a definitive origin. We don't know his name. Literally in The Killing Joke, he says, if I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. So the whole thing is like, yes, all of us fans accepted that The Killing Joke was most likely his origin. And that's the one, if you asked any comic fan or Batman fan, they'd say The Killing Joke. But it was now it was you could still argue it because the whole thing is like, yeah, but that's just the one like he goes with the most often. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the whole Heath Ledger thing where you want to know how I got these scars, and he tells a different story every time of how he got these scars. So I love that. I love the ambiguity of that. But this now confirms that that's his origin. The Killing Joke is his origin, which is insane and super, super risky. Now, I will say Batman 3 Jokers is a Black Label book. So that could mean this is not in continuity with all the Batman stuff that's going on in the main line. So I'm very, very curious. This is stuff we might not ever know because originally this 3 Jokers was supposed to be just a normal DC book. It took years and years. All the changes happened with DC. All the new directions. They changed the Doomsday Clock a little bit. They're doing death metal right now. So I'm curious to see if John's even had to change this story in general. You know what I mean? Because I'm wondering the continuity guy he's being. I wonder if him knowing this isn't really going to be in continuity, like it lines up with all this stuff, but it's still like a what if, a possible, maybe I could just, confirm his origin since it's not going to be main continuity. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking that more recently. I was sitting on that. I'm like, well, maybe that's why he did that because that is a huge thing to do. And though I like it and The Killing Joke's one of my favorite things ever, as the more time passed, I was like, yeah, but especially with things like his origin and his name, that's like a big part of why the Joker's so freaking cool. So I don't know if I liked it confirmed. Like, I think it was cool enough that we all accepted The Killing Joke was his origin, but we could still fight it because it wasn't 100% confirmed. So it still left, the mystery there. So I think maybe that's why Johns did it. Again, we'll never know. Maybe that was always his true intent, or maybe he just did it because he's like, hey, this is Black Label. It's not going to live in the main continuity. So I'm just going to confirm his origin since it's the freaking Killing Joke, and it'll kind of be my love letter to the Killing Joke because that's what this whole thing is about anyway, right? But I think that's why a lot of people were polarized with this, where everyone was like, the big hype was the 3 Jokers, because that's the name of the freaking book, and that's what Batman, said like 5 years ago in the Darkseid War storyline. But by the end of this, we realized that the 3 Jokers wasn't really that big of a thing. Like it's literally as simple as the Joker, one of the Jokers, which we led to believe that the comedian, the Killing Joke Joker, is the real original Joker. They don't confirm it, but I feel like through the dialogue, they say enough to where like, okay, yeah, they lead you to believe that he is the original. And he just basically made all these Jokers because he's the Joker. Why the heck not? He wants to mess with Batman. And then somewhere down the line, he got the idea to kidnap Joe Chill and heal Batman only to torment him more. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's very, very interesting. But it also makes sense that, these weren't original Jokers because the criminal Joker constantly said, it hurts when I laugh. Yeah. Which is a very cool thing, but he's the only Joker to say it, meaning maybe he's only saying that because he wasn't originally the Joker. He's just like was Jokerized. You know,
Possible,
I mean,
yeah.
again, this story, like The Killing Joke, you could take it different ways. People can interpret it differently. This is how I personally interpreted it. It's kind of like the whole thing. Did Batman kill the Joker at the end of The Killing Joke? Which I guess this book kind of confirms, right? Obviously, if it ties it all in, which is another thing I thought of after the fact. I'm like, wait, if he's making this origin canon, and that is how he became the Joker, and all that stuff did happen within the continuity and stuff, that also means Batman did not kill the Joker at the end of The Killing Joke. So we have unequivocally our answer for that as well.
Yeah.
So there's just so much to take away, but I've been talking forever.
There's so much. There was so much in this book, that is for absolute certain, that Jeff Johns toyed with. So I guess let me start at the beginning. Let me go back to the beginning.
That was a lot
of things, because there's just so many different things. Because some of these I have, you and I pretty much saw certain things the same, and then other things we saw the same, but then I had other feelings, I guess, about it.
Mm-hmm.
So for starters, when it comes to the entire redemptive arc for Joe Chill, I thought that was such a great aspect of this story, in the sense that Jeff Johns addressed what Joe Chill meant to Batman, what Joe Chill meant to Gotham, what Joe Chill meant to Bruce Wayne, in such a powerful way, I thought. But it was the humanity of the story about Joe Chill and him coming to grips with his own mistake, and Bruce Wayne, not Batman, Bruce Wayne, realizing that this was a broken man who couldn't figure out not only how to ask a boy to forgive him for something that's unforgivable, but how to forgive himself before the end of his own life, right? There was just so much humanity written into that redemptive arc for Joe Chill and for Bruce Wayne that I just really, really loved. It was so well told and well written. Then they
made you feel sorry for Joe Chill,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. By the end, you're like, oh my gosh, because it tells a tale of, again, it's humanity. It's about, seeking forgiveness and giving forgiveness.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone makes mistakes, and some mistakes, while they are irreversible and seemingly unforgivable, we are capable, and as human beings, we have the capacity to still to admit our mistakes and seek forgiveness. But I think even more importantly, on the other end of that, is we have the capacity to give forgiveness, even for things that seem unforgivable. I just loved that aspect of it. And then you added on top of that, the Joker's reason for setting that whole thing up in the first place, was because he wanted to be the greatest pain and the source of the greatest pain in Batman's life. Just kind of really cementing and nailing down who the Joker is, how he sees himself in relation to Batman and Bruce Wayne, and the absolute obsession that he has with Bruce Wayne, right? Now, having said that, again, all really well written and really well told. I wouldn't take anything away from the Joe Chill aspect of that, or why the Joker did it. But this story was hyped up for so long, right? And it was about the three Jokers, and that was the big thing. Because when we finally find out, and then I'll go right to this right up the front. When we finally find out why the Joker, specifically the comedian, and this is after they had already, Joe Chill had already gone through the whole thing inside the theater, where, Bruce Wayne spent his last moments with his parents. Once they go through that whole deal of the Joker getting Joe Chill to tell Batman, Bruce Wayne, why he did it. He attempts, this is the criminal who's orchestrating everything at this point. And everything kind of falls apart, and Batman winds up getting Joe Chill out of there before the Joker kills him. And they wind up outside in the alley where Joe Chill actually kills his parents. And that is where the true confrontation happens between Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Joe Chill. And just as they're going through him asking him, he tells Bruce, I know who you are, right?
Yeah.
That was another cool aspect. He tells him, I know who you are, and, you should just kill me, basically.
But it was one of those things, too, where that was kind of ambiguous, though, right? Because he says they talk about you in prison. But so is he saying, I know who you are, Batman? Or I know who you are, Bruce? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of like you could take it either way.
You could. The reason I took it as he's telling Bruce, I know who you are, is because he says, so you're going to kill me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Batman doesn't kill.
But why would they talk about Bruce in prison, though?
I think that again, this is all assumption because he didn't really flatly tell it.
Yeah.
My assumption would be it's like they say who you are, and I just pretty much figured out who you are.
Yeah. See,
we talk.
Yeah, I like how you could kind of go either way with it.
Yes, you could, and the ambiguity. But for me, I took away from it like he was telling Bruce, "I know who you are, so you're going to kill me, right?"
Yeah.
And then Batman says no, and he says, "Why? I deserve it." And then he asks him to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
That whole part was really cool. But the Joker comes blasting out of there, and he blasts a hole in the wall, and the criminal does, and he comes out, and Batman actually saves Joe Chill's life, kind of sealing the his forgiveness, him realizing this is a broken man and I need to let it go. Right. Mm-hmm. And the criminal comes out, and just when he's about to take out both Joe, he's strapped with explosives. He's about to take everybody out. He's like, okay, we're all going together, basically. And the comedian comes out of nowhere and he kills the criminal. Now, we had already been told in book 2 by the criminal that he's the first Joker. Or was it book 1 where he told us that?
It was book 1, I believe, where he says like, I created all of you or something like that.
Oh no, it was book 2 because he was saying it to Red Hood, right? Wasn't he telling Red Hood I was the first? It was when they had him tied to the chair.
I don't remember that. The part I'm remembering is in book 1 where the criminal Joker is sitting on the chair, sitting down, and like they're all call him boss. He's like the boss Joker, and he says something to the effect where like I created other Jokers, so it like you kind of assume that okay, maybe he's the original Joker.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. But either way, the criminal tells us in one of the instances that he's the original Joker. He just flatly says it. I'm the first one. I've been around since before Batman took over Gotham. Right? So we're all under the impression at this point that the criminal, because this is what he told us, that the criminal is the first Joker. He's also kind of the boss Joker. He's kind of running things. That whole thing. But in this moment where the criminal is about to, we're all going together, and he's about to explode the explosives on his chest. He's about to hit the trigger. The comedian comes out of nowhere, shoots the criminal in the head, and now we're down to 1, and it's just the comedian, right? So that leads us to the part in the where now we're in the, as I think, do they call it a paddy wagon?
The paddy wagon, yeah.
It's in the paddy wagon.
The police transport.
They're in the police transport, and they're headed, taking him back to Arkham. And that's where the Joker tells him, I know that you're Bruce Wayne. I know everybody. I know who you all are, basically. And he's explaining to him why he did it, why he wants to be the only and the main number one problem in his life, and the thorn in his side, and that this is never going to end until I say so, basically, until I stick the knife in and twist it, right? And he's going through all that, and it's all really well written, and it's really cool. But we get all the way to that point, and then he creates this ambiguity, right? And even in the writing,
as the Joker does,
like, okay, as the Joker does, of where he says, he talks about the criminal, and he says, I bet he regrets creating me, or did I create him, right? And that,
which I loved, by the way, because again, that's very reminiscent to the Killing Joke line.
Very much.
If I'm going to have a pass, I want it to be multiple choice. So for me, I love that ambiguity, because I'm like, that falls right in line with my favorite Joker story of all time.
I had no problem with that at all. But what it ends there pretty much, right? We go through all of this only to find out why the Joker set up the situation between Batman and Joe Chill. But we don't really find out anything about the Jokers, about the multiple Jokers. Why'd they start doing it in the first place? Where did they come from? What was the point? Why did we go through all of this lead up to get to this story, to tell a great story, but not one that was about the 3 Jokers? And that one left me a little bit empty.
Right.
where it was just like, okay, we told a great story called The Three Jokers, but it wasn't really about the three Jokers. And that's what, as fans, I think a lot of us, that's what we were there for. We wanted to see, what is The Three Jokers about? Where did this come from? And so that diminished a little bit for me. And then you had the added aspect of where at the end, where he's adding the ambiguity about whether or not he was the original, or the other original, or the criminal was the original. He is basically, he's creating that ambiguity, and he's saying, okay, this is going to go on now between us forever, and the whole thing. And then you're just like, cool, okay, we're about to find out something else, and then you don't. Yeah, and it's like, well, what?
Well, that's as far as complaints for the book go, that's probably the most common complaint. Mm-hmm. But for me, I like that, because I think the Joker is all about misdirect. You know what I mean? Where, yes, it was three Jokers. The book is called Three Jokers, and you see the three Jokers, but at the end you realize that doesn't really matter. What does matter?
Well, we didn't. That's the thing, though. We didn't just see three Jokers. We find out at the beginning of book 3 that there was a number of them over time. That this has been going on a long time. Right. But the Joker has been creating new Jokers of all types.
But they never made it. These are the only 3 that stuck, which is why there's 3, and which is why the Mobius chair said there is 3.
Right. But again, it does not address in any way at all why.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, again, the book's called Three Jokers because these are the 3 current Jokers around, and these are the 3 the book follows. Mm-hmm. But I like that it was a misdirect in the sense where it's like, yeah, there's 3 Jokers. I'm the original Joker, whoever one you want that to be, and I created these other 2. But that's not the point. Mm-hmm. The point is that I'm gonna use all this to get to you and show you that I'm going to be your number one. Do you know what I mean? So I totally understand why, you and a bunch of other people would be like, but I wanted more of that. I wanted, something maybe even more on a cosmic scale, or to be like, well, maybe, somehow they messed with the time stream or something like that, and we got 3. Like, totally understand. But again, for me, I like that kind of misdirect, and just like the Joker where it's like, you see the Joker all the time. It's like, yeah, but it really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is my relationship with you, Batman. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what I took away from it, where it's like, yeah, there's 3 Jokers and I made them and there's this thing, but I killed them because I'm the Joker and none of that matters. What matters is me getting to you, and I just became your number one. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And again, I think the reason that a lot of people, and I get what you're saying, I think the reason that a lot of people and a lot of fans are having an issue with it is because, again, and you kind of touched on it briefly, and we talked about it right after the book, is one of my other issues, is, we've been getting a lot of, and we've talked about it many times on this show, we've been getting a lot of Joker stories, a lot in recent years, the last couple especially, a lot of Joker stories, and several of them, especially the recent Joker War storyline, has also, the main crux of it at the end was about, it focused heavily on everything he did was about just getting to Batman, or proving and setting himself up as the number one obsession, or Batman as the number one obsession in his life. And he wanted Batman to see him as the number one priority. And so that's obviously a huge element of their relationship and that storyline. But because there's been so much of it, it just starts to feel redundant after a while. You just start to feel like, yeah, okay, that's cool, that's great, cool characters, well written, but we've established this numerous times already. So when you're going to set something as big and broad as this, really built up, touched on in multiple comics storyline of these 3 Jokers, and you're going to really emphasize that and introduce all this mystery, right? It had a little bit of a Lost element, the show Lost element to it for me, where you're introducing all these things, but like right up front, you're making all these promises to the audience that that you don't know how to fulfill, or you don't intend to fulfill or answer. And that is going to leave your audience feeling a little empty in the end. It's going to leave them feeling tricked. And you don't, as a writer, as a storyteller, you don't want your audience to feel tricked in the end. You want to bring resolution to your promises, to the promises you make to the audience. You want to keep them. You want to leave them feeling like there was no loose ends. There was nothing. And again, that's a lot about who the Joker is and what he is there's a lot of mystery and a lot of ambiguity. But this was like a very big overarching story that was where there was a lot of stuff set up and literally none of it was followed through on. It just wound up reverting back to something that we've established and we've had stories on numerous times. And like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that we've had so many Joker stories in the last few years, the last decade especially, many of which this was the point. This wound up being the main crux at the end. It was great stories. I mean, Snyder did it he's great at it. Where it winds up being, it's just to, make these kinds of points to Batman. It just starts to feel redundant. So with this, because it was such a big pitch and there were so many promises made in terms of the writing and the story, to leave it that unfulfilled, I felt it left me wanting for sure. That was a little bit of a miss for me. But the other aspect of it, and this is going back to the reveal that the origin, the Killing Joke origin, is officially canon as far as we know. Again, they haven't really officially confirmed that.
Yeah, we don't know where this book falls in real DC continuity. It's kind of sketchy because of the whole Black Label thing, and they haven't addressed it.
But the reason, on top of the fact that we really don't know for sure where this book falls, as we've talked about several times, even in discussing book 2 and book 1 of this story, is we don't know what's happening with DC regarding Jeff Johns' work just overall. But the reason that didn't impact, it was very cool. It was a cool aspect of this. But the confirmation of the Killing Joke origin in this story, the reason it didn't land as like huge for me is two reasons. One, yes, it is kind of the fan accepted version of it, but also DC has kind of been hinting for a while and has kind of broached elements of the Killing Joke story in other DC comics. Jeff Johns just did it recently in the Doomsday Clock story, which was a part of like the Rebirth, whole story arc. So it wasn't really that surprising. And it was like, wow, that's cool. Okay, they just flatly said it here. But then at the same time, I was like, but did they? Because now it's like, yes, it is a Joker's origin in this particular storyline, the 3 Jokers. Again, we don't know if it's canon for sure. But we don't know who that Joker is. And now is he the original Joker or is he not? We don't know because they throw a monkey wrench in it. First, they tell us he's not. So now we just know that one of the Jokers.
That's the brilliance of it though. That's what I love so much. It's like, yeah,
it's cool. I totally agree. What I'm saying is I totally agree. That's cool. That's fun. And that ambiguity, I already said, like, I love that ambiguity. I agree with that. What I'm saying is like, that's why it didn't impact me as like, whoa, this is huge. This is Joker getting an origin, because it really wasn't. It was them kind of already just saying, yeah, which we already kind of assumed and even knew based on the fact that they had teased other elements of the Killing Joke inside DC canon for several years. And then, they're just saying, okay, this, and then on top of that, we don't know if this is actually the Joker or if this is just one of the guys that had, that were Jokerized. And we know based on book 3, I think there was like 20 of them or something, or 30 of them, or however many of those. And each one of those would have had an origin too. They would have had a backstory and a family, arguably, or whatever. So it's like we're getting one of those confirmed as like, okay, this is one of the Jokers, but is he the first? Is he like the second or third? We don't really know. So very cool, but it didn't impact me as being like huge, as far as like, wow, this is mind blowing. Definitely cool. Definitely a ton of fun. But those two elements of, we don't really know that it's canon, 1. 2, we don't know for sure if this is the original Joker or not, or if it's just one of the Jokers that were created. And then you add on top of the fact that this is kind of already the widely accepted origin of the Batman, if it does indeed have one, and that they've already teased it several times. So it took some of the edge off of that for me, those elements of it. But out of that, and this is the part that makes it for me. This is what made that reveal the most important. And it's the part that it's the thing that makes me really hope they do make it canon, because the possibilities are huge, is the fact that it confirmed that the Joker's family is alive. And Batman, Bruce Wayne, knows it and has always known it, and he kept it from him. So the very reason that he became the Joker in the first place, that he turned into this monster, that everything, the whole Killing Joke storyline, that anyone can go nuts with one bad day, right? His one bad day was losing his wife and his child.
It wasn't real. It was fake.
Well, it wasn't real. It was concocted, and he was lied to from the start. And not only did that not only was he lied to, and that ruined his life and turned him into this monster, but Batman, the very person who he views as his heroic spirit animal, essentially, who he is obsessed with and I believe you've even mentioned it in the past, like we've seen it many times, and in this story where he's almost like an obsessed girlfriend, right? The very nature of his relationship to Batman and how he sees Batman, that person, for him, he robbed him of this thing that we saw in this story in book 1, where he's sitting there and he's imagining what his world could have been, even through his sadistic eyes and perspective.
On book 2, beginning of book 2.
Was it the beginning of book 2? Okay. But where we see him daydreaming about it, right? This was the payoff where we see, okay, this is him actually. And you saw the sadness in his eyes. We talked about that when we actually were talking about the book. In that moment, you saw when the way that they told that story of him daydreaming and then him being snapped out of it by the criminal, you saw the sadness in the comedian's eyes, that he was reminiscing about something that he really wishes were true. Now we find out that he's reminiscing about what could have been had his wife and his child not died, right? Even though he's seeing it now through his sadistic Joker eyes. So now, if he finds out that not only is that loss caused by a lie, and who he is, and what he's done and what he's turned into, been a lie, but what he's lost out on is all based on a lie. Once he finds out that the person who made sure to keep it from him is Batman, it will completely alter the way the Joker reacts or relates to Batman, the way he sees Batman. And instead of being obsessed with him, he will turn all of his sadistic energy into making Batman an actual hated enemy. And that's a very different interaction than the one he typily has with Batman.
No, it's brilliant.
He doesn't want Batman. He doesn't want Batman to get hurt. He doesn't want Batman to die, because that would end the fun.
But that's why I'm like conflicted with this story, where I like the ambiguity, but I also like the fact that he knows now, like if this is canon, which is why I think it's such a big deal, because I think a lot of the story too, like, I think this would have been very different if Jeff Johns would have stayed their chief creative officer, which is kind of a shame. I think this all would have played out in the future, and continuity of these books would have been very, very different. So I feel like we're never going to get what was truly intended. Because again, this happened 5 years ago in the Darkseid War story, which is another thing. People are saying that like the continuity doesn't line up. And I argue that all the time, because you got to remember, when Batman was on the Mobius chair and he asked, what's Joker's name? Before he asked that, he asked the Mobius chair, who killed my parents? It said Joe Chill. Right. Then he asked, what's the Joker's name? And then it says there's 3. So I didn't take it as he's asking because he needed to know, like he doesn't know, he wanted to know.
Right.
I took it as, oh, he's like confirming, because like obviously he knew who killed his parents, Joe Chill. So he's doing questions first to test the Mobius chair to see if it gives the right answers. So when it said 3 Jokers, he was just shocked to be like, whoa. I only know the name of 1. What do you mean there's 3? So that's how I took it. So I think no one's really looking at it that way, but that if you look at it that way and it can be interpreted that way, there's no continuity issues that way. You know what I mean? Because everyone's like, why would he ask if he already knew? I'm like, well, he didn't necessarily know. Just because he's asking doesn't mean he knew. I mean, he asked about, who killed his parents. He knew Joe Chill did it. So why did he ask that? He's trying to confirm to see if this thing is going to give him the right answers. So I think that's how Jeff Johns intended it, to be written and come off as. I think it's just coming misinterpreted, if you will.
Yeah, and I could see it either way, but it certainly gave, the way it was written certainly gives Johns and DC, if they choose to actually make this canon, plausible deniability.
For sure.
It definitely gives them their out, and it can be explained exactly the way that you saw it, which, again, I could see it either way. But it's not, I've seen a lot of people citing that very thing, but I just don't think, for that very reason you just cited, I just don't think that's enough of a complaint to be like, oh, this is totally out of line with continuity and all that kind of, to be that be the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue, if you do have one with this book, is, I guess at the top of the list would be the fact that it really didn't do anything with the Three Jokers element. That would be the biggest thing from a storytelling and as a reader's standpoint, that there was promises made that they just never addressed. It was kind of, but it doesn't take away. Again, I'm pointing out things that that they did. I do wish it was different, but
well, it's not only you. Like that's I would say that's the number one complaint. If people have a complaint with this book, is the whole Three Joker element. Because again, the whole start of it was there's three Jokers. Then we have a Batman Three Jokers book. Like that's been the tease ever since the beginning. So I get it. It's just for me, like with the Joker, it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things, because like. I kind of like the way it's all been built up too, because with Scott Snyder and Death of the Family, the whole thing with that and him going after his family was to be like, look, these people are making you weak. They're taking the edge off. Like if we get rid of them, then you could play at level like 100 with me and you won't have any distractions. Like I'm the number one guy. Give your attention to me. Stop playing with all these Nightwings and Red Hoods and stuff like that. Play with me. You know what I mean? So for me, like I know to your point earlier where you were saying you felt like you've seen this before, because we kind of did, like with Death of the Family, like I'm just talking about. And then even in Joker War, where, the whole point was, dude, I'm just doing this to tear down everything you built. Like, I don't really want to like kill you and hurt your family. I'm just literally trying to torture you by making your family's legacy suck and make people hate Batman. So I feel like it was almost a slow burn over all these years. Because first he's saying like, hey, your family's making you weak. Give me attention. Then he's like, hey, I'm just trying to mess with you again, before ultimately finally getting to the end where he finally like became number one. So for me, it was like a slow burn to where it's like, okay, Death of the Family, he's trying to like be the number one, but no, Batman has a family, and Batman by the end of the story realizes he needs to rely on his family. Then you have a bunch of stories in between. Then you have Joker War, where it's like, okay, he's like doing all this to the city just to be like, hi, I want you to start over because I hate you and give me attention. And then finally Batman Three Jokers, he finally accomplishes what he wants and becomes the number one bullseye and hated thing in Batman's life. So I'm looking at it like at a whole like a 10-year arc, almost like MCU style, where we finally got to the end at Three Jokers. And I get it. That's just me. I understand, people who don't.
I totally see what you're saying. And I even think you're right on in the sense of like, if this, and this is why I say, and I emphasize, I think that the part at the end where we find out that the Joker's family is alive, but more importantly, that Batman has known where they are and has been protecting them and keeping that a secret. Crazy. That is the part that's why I'm emphasizing. This is the part that for me was the biggest piece, because if we're dealing with a situation where they have been building all this up and emphasizing the Joker's obsession and him slowly building to this point to where he literally has helped to heal the relationship that he had toward Joe Chill that made him Batman in the first place, just so that he could take that number one spot, so that they could then use the reveal that Batman or the Joker's family is alive and Batman knows it, so that just as the Joker finally reaches the position that he's always wanted to be with in his own eyes, in his own crazy mind, he's finally reached that position that he's always wanted to be in Batman's life, that he finds out that it's all a lie, that Batman, who Batman is, that sets it on a course where now he just feels this in his sick mind. Again, he feels betrayed, totally betrayed by the person he cares the most about.
I counted on you.
Yeah, to where he just has, I could even see it in the panels of him freaking out. You say, how could you? You lied to me. You did this to me. To where he just totally loses it. But it turns from his obsession to hatred. And the stuff they could play with that, and that storyline could be insane.
For sure.
Insane. But that is all dependent on, and that was what kind of left me feeling almost a little bit sad.
You don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, we talked about it a little bit. That was my sadness, is it's like, are they going to actually do anything with that? Because for me, that was the coolest aspect of the end of this story, was them revealing that Batman has been hiding his family from him this whole time, that he knows who he is, he knows who his family is, he knows where they are, and he's been hiding that from him. That aspect, that setup, if kept in canon and used, could be some of the coolest Batman Joker stories ever written, if exploited properly. And there's some great writers that have their hands on Batman right now that could do some incredible work with that. That leaves you with the question of, if it's written by Jeff Johns, is it going to get used? And is it going to they're just going to say it's a black label, it's not canon, and we're moving on with these other plans that we have for the DC universe. If that's the case, then that really, for me, leaves this in the category of great standalone story, very interesting, very fun, great artwork, really well written, but disappointing in terms of what it could have meant for the overall Batman mythos.
For sure. It's like I said in the episode where we break down issue 3. It's kind of like Batman has the ultimate joke. He pulled the ultimate joke on the Joker, right? Like that he knows who he is, and that who his family, more importantly, is, but he hasn't told him. It's like he almost kind of won in a sense, where he has this ace in his back pocket where he's like, yeah, all right, but you think you're doing all this, and you know who I am, but guess what? I know that your wife and kid is still alive, and I know where they live. So it's like the craziest, and I agree with everything you just said. I think I said a lot of that already in that episode, where this opens the gate for stories that could be insane with Batman and Joker. If they decide to play with this, that is crazy. The thing that's annoying for me in general with DC's doing some great stories right now. The only complaint I have with DC publishing as a whole right now is I don't know if everything counts, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's going to matter a year from now. So I'm they're doing great stories right now. James, especially with, all the Batman stuff, James Tynion is doing a fantastic job with all his Batman stuff. But it's where's it gonna be? Because you also have, even without this story, you have DC Future State. So is that gonna change things? Because in the newest issue of Batman, they reveal spoilers, Batman 101, that Lucius Fox has all of Bruce's money now. He has all of it. He's got tens of billions of dollars in his bank account. And Bruce is letting him keep it. That way he could still be Batman, because Lucius is like, hey, man, you got all the eyes on the world. All the governments have eyes on you right now. They think you were negligent with all the things that went on with Joker War and stuff like that. So if you take this money back, you can't use a penny of it to fund your Batman stuff, because they'll know. So Batman has to be very low key and super ground level, more so than ever now. But in that, we see Lucius Fox kind of hints. Batman kind of hints to Grifter, who's working for Lucius Fox. He's like, I know that he's working on Project Halo, which, if you know anything about DC Future State and all these stories going on, is Lucius Fox now making his own new Batman? Because they made it very important to put Lucius Fox's son in this comic, and even him mention him being like, yeah, he's working for me now. And we all know Batwing, Lucius Fox's son. So is that going to be the new direction they go, where now our new Batman is at?
That's what they told us a while back.
So that's what I'm saying. How much is this going to matter? Where is this going to end? I don't know.
Exactly. And that aspect of it is a big part. That coupled with them not answering the 3 Jokers, and it really made those two things are what makes it the most. It left me wanting, I guess. But it also added this question mark for me in my mind of, is that why it was delayed so long? Is the fact that there was already issues going on at DC? Jeff Johns wasn't 100% sure or where his future was going to lie in regard to DC. The DC brass and, you know, the AT&T executives were already handing down things, and there was already discussions about DC was going to be roped back. Did that play a role in where this story went? Why he didn't explain certain things about really anything about the three Jokers and why they started and what it was about and all of that. Did he have to change his story and make it more simplistic and more about the individual characters that everyone knows are going to stay around no matter what, you know, to keep it from being of like, you know, them, or I guess creating too many continuity issues with the future direction? Did that play a role? And I'm not saying it did definitively. I'm just saying I'm asking the question because there were some things that, for me, it seemed a little out of character for Geoff Johns. Again, going back to the point that you made about The Flash, right? Mm-hmm. We get all these promises, all these big, great story arcs and stuff like this. But in the end, we find out that Eobard Thawne, went back in time and killed his parents. He was responsible for the death of Barry Allen's parents, right? We find these things out. Mm-hmm. We learn these things. So it's for there not to be any answer at all, or really it really being much addressed at all, other than little hints.
I mean, they did answer it though. They didn't like not leave an answer. They basically just said that he creates these Jokers just to kind of make like a new one or better one to create chaos. That's kind of what they alluded to, where it's just like, I make these Jokers just to see if I can make the next generation of it and make the ultimate Joker. Like that was the whole point of the criminal. He's trying to make the ultimate version of himself.
They even question like, what does it mean making a better Joker? What does that mean? Yeah. Right. And the comedian kind of addresses it and says like he had these grand ideas or whatever. And I know what our relationship really should be in the whole thing. So the dialogue is all really great. So
they do answer it. The whole point.
Well, they kind of give you something. I wouldn't say they answer it. They just give you something. I mean, that's
an answer, because they literally say that they're just trying to make a better Joker. Like Batman, the whole point of issue 3 in the beginning, Batman says he's trying to make a better Joker. Like that's the whole theme throughout the whole thing. Like that's the revelation of the point. He's just trying to make a better Joker.
Right. But what I'm saying is it felt slapped together.
Oh, okay.
It felt really simplistic, like they kind of just gave you something. They had to give you
something.
Going
back to where you're right? Curious to see. Well, I said that earlier too. I am curious to see if he had to change it, because I mean, it did take a long time too. It was 5 years. The story was supposed to come out a
really long
ago.
time. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder how much of that was about back and forth with DC and them trying to come to some sort of a compromise, because they had already promised the book. The fan base was wildly excited about it and anticipating the book's release, and it took forever for a 3-book story arc. You mean to tell me it took that many years to write 3 50-page books? Come on. No way. I don't care how busy he is. There's just no way, man. It was delayed too many times, so
we'll never
it would make a ton of
sense.
If we do
know,
we'll never know. Maybe in the future, maybe Geoff Johns will write a book, whatever.
A memoir?
Yeah, memoirs, yeah. And this will wrap up my thoughts on the overall, because I know we're running long here. But the last couple of aspects of the book, just touching on what you were saying about Jason's relationship and love for Barbara.
Love that part,
and how he left the note on the door. It's really good and sad and heartbreaking and everything like that. And it leaves you in this part, other than the note on the door thing that we already talked about, is did you notice the janitor dressed in purple with the fun time cleaners?
There was definitely hints of like, is that a Joker?
Yes, absolutely. And like, as soon as you see him, you're like, is that really the Joker? Like, how on earth, right? But then, is it the Joker? Is it the comedian? Or is it another Joker? Right? We just don't know. That's what I'm saying.
And the mystery goes on.
And that's what it was so frustrating. It was like, is it or isn't it? But that was an interesting Easter egg there at the end. But then the last thing I wanted to mention, and this is kind of like, I guess it's kind of another part of the things that stood out to me as like, I don't know if I like that, is when he was adding the Killing Joke origin there, and we were finding out that Batman had been hiding his family, and his family's still alive. When they tell us what really happened with the Joker's wife, who's pregnant at the time, when they show and they kind of revert back to the scenes that we saw in the Killing Joke, I felt like I guess I can't say that he did definitively, but I felt like Geoff Johns changed aspects of the Killing Joke story of that origin story for that character before he became Joker.
What do you mean?
He was much more of an empathetic figure in The Killing Joke
for sure
than Jeff Johns showed him. They showed him, and that was kind of bothered me because I felt like that the way Alan Moore wrote that's what made that origin work so well. You felt bad for him. You didn't feel like this is an abusive husband and he deserves what he got. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree with that. I thought that too. I forgot to bring that up. No, I totally got because I actually went back and read that scene in The Killing Joke. Like,
right.
And
so did I.
Like, but he's so, because it wasn't like he was abusive in that scenario. It was like he was
Not
just
at all.
upset and like having a fight with his wife and freaked out. Because literally moments after that, his wife is even like, "Oh, it's okay, honey. I know we're going through a hard time, and you can't. You just want money to support us." So yes, I 100% agree with that. That it does change him into like now being this abusive husband monster when the whole point was to be like, no, he's just because the whole point of The Killing Joke was he's a normal good guy who became bad because he had one bad day.
Exactly. But not only that, he was just a regular guy who genuinely loved his wife and had a child on the way and was nervous and was scared and didn't know what to do and was trying really hard and he was down on his luck. And then he had this horrible tragedy, and that tragedy mixed with all of the bad luck that he had been experiencing was what pushed him over the edge. So now you remove those empathetic elements that make him just kind of a crazy monster from the beginning that just became even more of a monster. It changes the dynamic entirely of that character and his origin. And I did not like that. I thought that did a little bit of a disservice to the way that Alan Moore told that story and portrayed that origin and how that character was given to us originally. I thought it betrayed it a little bit, and I think it took a little bit away from it in terms of how the compelling nature of it, because that was the trick, right? You found out that, if this is who the Joker was, you felt bad for him, and you found yourself feeling sad and empathetic towards the Joker, who is this sadistic, psychopathic killer, right? And that was what made that whole turn to where you can be like, wow, what a deep, compelling concept of anyone who goes through enough, who experiences enough battering of life and tragedy, depending on how you handle it, it can push you into a really dark place. Right?
Well, that's the tricky part with bringing something so iconic like that into continuity. That's what I was saying earlier. Like on one hand, I like it. On the other hand, I don't like, because when initially reading it, it just blew my mind because I was just in shock. I'm like, oh, they confirmed it. Oh my God, this is so weird. This never really happened. But then the more you sit on it, you're like, yes, still cool and crazy, but at the same time, not only does it take away from the mystery of the Joker, because again, I think I said this in the episode we did on issue 3, where it's like, I don't know if I want him to have a definitive origin. I like the ambiguity. I don't know if I like the fact that now we know. It's like, on one hand, The Killing Joke's my favorite storyline of all time, so yeah, I'm glad that that's confirmed his origin. But on the other hand, why it is my favorite story of the other time is because the ambiguity of it, and like even like you said, it made him a very, like, you felt bad for the guy. And the way they did it in this, they're like, oh, but he was just an abusive husband and she needed to get away from him. So, it's one of those things where there's a lot of cool elements, and then there's some stuff when you deep dive, you're like, but then that changes this and that changes that. So, and in the end, it's like, again, we're talking about all this, and what if it's not even like canon? it's just an story where it's awesome because in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to matter for the main Batman books.
And we don't want to take anything away from the fact that this was a brilliantly written story.
It's Jeff Johns
in terms of its writing, and it was by Jeff Johns. He did an incredible job with it as a standalone story. It was really entertaining. It was a lot of fun. It was very compelling and beautifully written. And again, I don't want to, by no means do I want to take anything away from the artwork that Jason Fabok did in this book. It's just that there were a couple of pieces that took the edge, and all the things that we just talked about. Those things took a little bit of the edge off of what was otherwise a really good story and a well-written book. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely, I mean, either way, polarizing or not, it is going to be a classic and talked about Batman book for many years to come. That's for dang sure.
Without a doubt, yeah. And if they make it canon, it's going to be debated even further. But,
very curious.
As a standalone, Yeah, if they don't make it canon, then everybody will just talk about it more in the lines of like, you know, the what if and all of that kind of stuff, and the cooler aspects will stand out, I think, more.
Faux show. But I think with that, we've been ranting for what, like an hour here?
Over an hour, yeah. There's a lot to talk about on this book.
Joke. We did want to get into the first episode of The Mandalorian, but I guess we're just going to wait till next week and talk about the first 2 episodes in one podcast.
Yes, we did go. We went a little bit long in the tooth on the Three Jokers finale, or rather. But as we did promise you guys that we were going to talk about every episode of The Mandalorian, and we're going to stay true to that. But we don't have enough time to do it today. So next week we will do both episode 1 and episode 2. But you know, both of us, I think, can agree right off the bat that it got off to a great start with Jon Favreau's directorial debut on the series. Which was so good.
I think it was an equal cliffhanger, comparable to the pilot episode for season 1. Where season 1, they introduced the child at the end of the episode, and for season 2, they introduced or revealed something very crazy. Very, very huge. We'll get into all the spoilers next week. I'm sure most people probably already know, because who hasn't been watching The Mandalorian, right? You know?
Yeah, well, there's not a lot to do right now, if you haven't noticed, but yeah. And I look forward to talking about, because there is a lot to talk about, and it's very good.
All I'm saying is I called it in the first season. I said it. I was like, it's happening. There's no way this thing isn't still around.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see where they go with it. So next week, next podcast, we're going to be talking about both episodes. So be ready for that.
All right, guys. With that, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.